Now, my good friend Eisa Ali is so lucky that he is in Qatar for the World Cup. I couldn't even get into Qatar. Never mind get a ticket for the World Cup. But my friend is there. I wonder if he shares the perspectives I've been expressing this evening. Let's quickly find out. Freelance journalist, political analyst of Middle Eastern politics, Supreme. Eisa, welcome, and lucky you being in Qatar. It was a miserable opening game, but it always is. It was actually less boring than most opening games. Qatar were very, very poor. They would have been better investing some of their money in naturalizing a few Brazilians and putting them in their national team, but I suppose it's to their credit that they didn't do that. But how do people there feel, do you think, about the rampant Orientalism that we are expressing in the Western media about the fact the World Cup is there in the first place?
Well, I think it's just great to see you as well, George. I think what we've been seeing here in Qatar is a real hardening of attitudes towards what they see as you said it, a type of colonial arrogance rooted in, frankly, racism and a neo-colonial attitude, an imperialist attitude, an attitude of superiority. The problem for mainly the West, the Europeans, and to a degree the North Americans as well, is that their view of the world is myopic, and they are a minority in this view. And the views here is that there are some criticisms that have been legitimate. For example, when it comes to the issue of workers' rights, the Qataris say that they've undertaken a large number of reforms, but even the number that's gone around, 6,500 workers killed since the beginning of the bid or the building of these stadiums, it's just simply not true. It's 6,500 people who are foreign workers who have died in the 12 years since here. Now, those people could have died in that interim period from COVID. They could have died from getting hit by a bus. They could have died of a heart attack. And yes, some of them could have died on the sites of the building of these stadiums. But yet, even the things that the Qataris accept, which are the workers' rights, even those are rooted in lies. But then when it comes to the other things, this kind of hysterical outpouring when it comes to questions of LGBT rights or not being able to buy beer in the stadiums. Again, like last night, I went for a walk in the souk, the market in Doha, and I saw a gentleman who was maybe one can describe as visibly gay. He wasn't European. It's key to understand. He was a man from East or Southeast Asia, not hiding his identity, not in any way trying to be ashamed of it or scared. No one bothering him, because in this part of the world, and this is what people may not understand, the concept of sexual identity as a political identity is completely alien. There is no concept of somebody being gay or straight or any of those things. There are there's a fluidity in people's sexual identity, and what people in the West seem to not understand is that the Qataris have said repeatedly, everyone's welcome. You can behave how you like in the privacy of your own homes, but we have certain cultural norms in the public sphere. And the attitude here has been that we've bent over backwards to welcome everybody for the last few years, but that this media campaign is simply too much on the question, for example, of the beer. I mean, I just went to the game. They were serving alcohol in some parts of the ground, mainly the hospitality parts, and not in the normal parts of the ground, because, frankly speaking, maybe they see that certain groups of fans or a certain type of fan can't be trusted to drink alcohol in the stadiums. And I think that is the key. It's not so much that they are closing off to the rest of the world, but they understand that there are certain behaviors and standards that they want people to behave by. And if, again, the small fringe minority in the West can't seem to understand this, and because their worldview is so myopic, they don't understand the rest of the world doesn't see it that way. It's their loss. And I think politically this is going to have ramifications for the West. I think Qatar are being pushed into a position where they're going to be a lot more, maybe skeptical of the European countries, of Britain, of Germany, and of the United States. I don't know if you saw, George, but I was in the stadium, but I saw on Twitter, apparently they didn't play the opening ceremony on the BBC. and they were just showing some documentary about the so-called ills of Qatar to do with, of course, the workers' rights and LGBT and other things. I mean, it's outrageous. It's really outrageous for the BBC to take such a political stance. Not surprising to myself or to you, but I think for many people here, it's going to be a big wake-up call as to the type of arrogant mentality that still persists to this day.
I think that's very interesting that there'll be a backlash, not just in Qatar, but across the Arab world to this. It is frankly racist. Since the 70s, since the oil price quadrupled and it dawned on people in the West that guys with towels on their heads controlled the energy market and their countries could become extremely rich whilst ours was going down. There has been that current in Western opinion, political opinion, media opinion. But someone is behind this. It's too big a campaign to have just emerged out of thin air. Because the Grand Prix is in Saudi Arabia next month. It's already been in Bahrain. And we never got anything like this campaign. What is it about Qatar that has attracted the attention of this big campaign, and who might be behind it and why?
Well, in terms of who's behind it, I think there are two issues, right? So one is a general arrogance in the media class. I mean, look, we both know the type of people that get attracted to work in the Western media, in the British media. We've both been, one could say, victims of it, because we've seen firsthand the type of, class breakdown and the type of mentality in that very liberal-minded media. And I don't mean liberal in terms of, having progressive views. I mean liberal in the kind of arrogant worldview that they hold. So I think there is just a general groupthink. But in a specific sense, you look at the difference between the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, and they've even normalized or have warmer ties with the illegal entity known as Israel. But interestingly, here in Qatar, a country that hasn't normalized ties, you're seeing Palestine flags everywhere, from Qataris, from Palestinians, from others. This tournament is really, really being utilized as a chance to show solidarity with the Palestinian people, with the Palestinian struggle. It's something that lives in the hearts of Qataris. There was a video that went viral of an Israeli channel trying to interview people in the souk, and one market stall owner saying, "Oh, where are you from?" The guy says, "We're from Israel." He says, "Oh, I'm not talking to your station." And the host was shocked. And there are Israelis here. From what I understand, the condition for them to be allowed here is that Palestinians also have to be allowed to visit as well in equal number from the West Bank, I believe. So we haven't seen any visible signs of those Zionists here. I think they know perfectly well the strength of feeling towards them. And maybe that's one of the underpinnings of this kind of backlash, that, Mohammed bin Salman is fine, Mohammed bin Zayed in the Emirates is fine, because ultimately they're no threat to the imperial order, they're no threat to Israel, they're no threat to Zionism. Yet Qatar still, whatever you think of their politics, whatever you think of them, they haven't normalized with that state. And actually you're seeing, as you were just saying there, a strengthening of feeling in the Arab, in the Muslim world, and frankly in the non-European world. And people are rallying around Qatar, and they're supporting Qatar because they can see this for the agenda-driven dribble that it is.
Tell me, we've only got a minute. Tell me, what's your tip? You're there on the ground. Who's the winner of the World Cup, do you think?
I think it's going to be Brazil. I hope it's going to be Brazil. I think they've got a really good team this year. Got a couple Arsenal players in there as well. So I've got a vested interest in Brazil. So I think they could do well. And obviously, the French will always do well, although they do have a few injuries. But if I was a betting man, my money would be on Brazil.
And who are you supporting tomorrow, England or Iran?
There was once a saying about a so-called cricket test. Let's just say I'd be failing that cricket test and supporting Iran.
You and me both, my friend. You and me both. Thank you very much indeed, Eisa Ali.